Welcome back. You are listening to the home of forbidden romances. Prepare yourself, because tonight's story will leave you breathless. The taste of peaches turned to ash in my mouth before I could even draw a breath. One moment, the sun was warming the back of my neck, the scent of wildflowers filling the air as Selim's eyelashes fluttered against my cheek, his lips soft and yielding against mine. I was 18, my heart was hammering a frantic rhythm against my ribs, and the boy I had loved since we were children had finally accepted me. I closed my eyes to deepen the kiss, to savor the victory of a love that was supposed to be eternal. But when I opened them, the sunlight was gone. The smell of wildflowers had been replaced by the cloying stench of iron, incense, and old blood. The warmth on my neck was now a chilling draft. And Selim was not leaning in to kiss me. He was kneeling 10 feet away on a floor of polished black marble, his wrists bound in heavy, rune-etched chains. My breath hitched, a strangled sound in a throat that felt dry and raw. I looked down at myself. The rough linen tunic of a chaotic youth was gone. In its place, I wore robes of suffocatingly heavy black silk embroidered with silver dragons, and my hands were pale, adorned with rings of onyx and ruby, resting on the armrests of a massive, obsidian throne. "Your Imperial Majesty?" A voice whispered from my right. I turned sharply. A man I didn't recognize, tall, bespectacled, with the cold efficiency of a viper, bowed low. "General Selim awaits your final judgment. The executioner is ready." Executioner. My gaze snapped back to the center of the room. The man on the floor looked up. It was Selim, but it wasn't my Selim. The boy with the shy smile and the ink-stained fingers was gone. This man was broader, his skin a roadmap of pale scars, his jaw set in a line of hard, hateful granite. His golden eyes, once filled with the nervous affection of a first love, now burned with a loathing so profound it felt like a physical blow. "Do it, Lysander," Selim rasped, his voice rough, as if he hadn't used it for speaking in days, only screaming. "End it. Or do you plan to drag this out for another decade?" Decade? Panic, cold and sharp, spiked through my chest. I scrambled for a logical explanation. A dream? A hallucination? But the bite of the gold ring into my finger was too real. The thrum of magic in the air, dark, heavy, suffocating, was undeniable. I had closed my eyes at 18. I had opened them, and I was clearly no longer 18. And the boy I had just kissed was now a man asking me to kill him. "Stop," I whispered. The court, a sea of faceless nobles and shadows, fell deathly silent. The bespectacled man frowned. "Sire," I said. "Stop." My voice boomed, deeper and more resonant than I remembered, echoing off the vaulted ceiling. I stood up, the heavy robes cascading around me like a dark waterfall. My legs felt steady, powerful, but my insides were trembling. "Clear the room. Everyone out. Now." But the execution, the aide began. Did I stutter, Lord Varian? The name came to my tongue unbidden, a muscle memory I didn't possess. Varian's eyes widened behind his glasses. He bowed hastily, fear radiating off him. "As you command, Emperor Lysander." Emperor. Within moments, the heavy oak doors groaned shut, leaving me alone in the dim, torch-lit expanse with the man I loved. The silence stretched, heavy and taut as a bowstring. I took a step down from the dais. Selim didn't flinch. He just watched me with that terrifying, predatory hatred. "Selim," I breathed, the name feeling like a prayer. "Don't," he spat. The sound echoed. "Don't say my name with that mouth. Not after everything you've done. Just kill me, Lysander. You've taken my family, my land, and my freedom. Have you not had your fill of my suffering?" I froze on the steps. Taken his family? I looked at him, searching for the boy who used to sneak me extra pastries from the kitchens. "Selim, I don't know what you're talking about. I don't know where we are." Selim let out a dark, dry laugh. He shifted, the chains rattling violently. "Amnesia? That's the game for today? Is torture too boring for the tyrant of the North now? You want to play house? You want to pretend we're back in the academy before you burned it to the ground?" I stumbled back as if struck. "I burned the academy? I didn't," I stammered, feeling like a child in a giant's body. "Selim, please. The last thing I remember. We were in the meadow. I confess to you. You kissed me." The silence that followed was absolute. Selim's expression shifted. The hatred didn't vanish, but it was fractured by confusion. He scrutinized me, his golden eyes narrowing. He looked for the lie. He looked for the cruelty that apparently usually lived in my eyes. That was 10 years ago, he said slowly, his voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. 10 years, Lysander. Before the corruption. Before you murdered your father to take the throne. Before you declared war on the Solar Duchy. Before you made me your prisoner. My knees gave out. I sat heavily on the marble steps of the dais, burying my face in my hands. The rings cold against my forehead. 10 years. I had lost 10 years. And in those 10 years, I had become a monster. I don't remember, I whispered, the horror rising in my throat. I swear to you, Selim. I don't remember any of it. A metallic clink. Then another. Selim was dragging himself toward me. Not to comfort me, I realized with a jolt, but to assess a weakness. If you are lying, Selim hissed, stopping at the foot of the stairs, I will rip your throat out with my teeth. I wish you would, I said, looking up at him, tears blurring my vision. If I did those things to you, I wish you would. For the first time, the hardness in Selim's face cracked. He saw the tears. The tyrant emperor, the man who supposedly burned academies and murdered kin, was crying like a heartbroken teenager. Because that is exactly what I was. Unlock me, he demanded. I looked at his wrists. The manacles were glowing with faint purple runes. I didn't have a key, but as I focused on them, I felt a tug in my gut, a dark, swirling pool of energy. It terrified me, but I pulled at it instinctively. The runes flared, then shattered. The chains fell away with a heavy clang. Selim rubbed his bruised wrists, his eyes never leaving mine. He stood up, towering over my seated form. The dynamic had shifted instantly. The prisoner was free, and the emperor was broken. You really aren't him, Selim murmured, almost to himself. His eyes. They haven't looked this clear in a decade. What happened to me? I pleaded. Why did I do this? Selim reached out, his hand hovering near my face before pulling back, as if remembering that touch was dangerous. You sought power. The kingdom was dying of the frost plague. You went to the Forbidden Library. You said you would pay any price to save us. His face twisted in pain. You saved us, Lysander. The plague ended. But the price was your soul. The corruption took your empathy, your memories, your heart. It left only ambition and cruelty. He looked away, his jaw tightening. You saved the world, and then you enslaved it. The irony tasted like bile. I had destroyed myself to save him, and in doing so, I had become his nightmare. I have to fix it, I said, standing up. The vertigo swayed me, but I locked my knees. I have to undo it. You can't, Selim said bitterly. The corruption isn't a spell you can just dispel. It's woven into your blood now. That's why your hair turns silver. That's why your touch freezes everything. I looked at my hands again. I hadn't noticed the frost creeping along the armrests of the throne where I had gripped them. Then I'll abdicate, I said wildly. I'll give the throne to you. I'll leave. And leave the court vipers to tear the kingdom apart. Selim scoffed. Varian would have a knife in my back before you reach the city gates. No. If you are truly you, then we are in more danger than ever. Why? Because the emperor is feared, but a confused boy in the emperor's body. Selim stepped closer, his voice low. That is prey. As if summoned by his words, the heavy doors creaked open. Varian entered, followed not by guards, but by 4 figures cloaked in gray, the High Council. Sire, Varian said, his voice smooth but his eyes sharp behind the glass. We heard shouting. Is the execution delayed? I looked at Selim. He stood tall, defiant, but I saw the tremor in his hands. He was weak, starved, and unarmed. If they knew I was compromised, they would kill us both. I had to act. I had to be the monster they expected, just for a little longer. I straightened my spine, letting the heavy silk settle around me. I forced my face into a mask of boredom, channeling every ounce of arrogance I could muster. I recalled the feeling of the ice magic and let it seep into my voice. Delayed, I drawled, stepping down to stand beside Selim. I reached out and grabbed Selim's chin, forcing him to look at me. His skin was warm, so vividly alive against my cold fingers. His eyes widened in shock, but he didn't pull away. I decided that death is too easy a mercy for the rebel leader. Varian paused, assessing. Then what is your will, Majesty? He returns to my personal quarters. I declared, my voice steady despite the racing of my heart. He will serve me directly, until I break him completely. A murmur went through the council. It was a scandal. It was unheard of. But it was exactly the kind of twisted cruelty the tyrant was known for. Varian bowed, a flicker of suspicion in his eyes, but he could not disobey. As you wish. Shall I summon the guards to escort him? No, I said, releasing Selim's chin. I will take him myself. Leave us. I turned my back on them, a calculated risk, and swept toward the side entrance that led to the royal wing. I heard Selim's footsteps behind me. We walked in silence through corridors of black stone and silver tapestries. Only when the heavy door of my chambers locked behind us did I let the mask drop. I slumped against the wood, exhaling a breath I felt I'd been holding for an hour. You're a terrible actor, Selim said. I opened my eyes to see him leaning against a velvet chaise, watching me. He looked exhausted, but the murderous rage had cooled into a wary curiosity. They bought it, I defended weakly. For now, Selim agreed. He walked over to a table where a decanter of wine sat. He poured a glass, his hands shaking slightly, and drank it in one go. Then he turned to me. So, you're back. The boy who cried when he stepped on a snail. I did not cry. I protested, a flash of the old banter sparking between us. You did. You made a grave for it. Selim's lips quirked, a ghost of a smile that vanished as quickly as it appeared. He stepped closer, entering my personal space. The air between us crackled, a mix of the old attraction and the new, dangerous history. Why did you save me just now? He asked softly. You could have handed me over. You could have run. Because I love you, I said. It was the truth of the 18-year-old, unburdened by the decade of darkness. I don't care what I became. I don't care about this throne. I just want to go back to the meadow. Selim's expression shattered. He reached out, his rough, scarred fingers tracing the line of my jaw. We can never go back to the meadow, Lysander. That world is gone. He leaned in, his forehead resting against mine. I could feel the heat of him, the life of him. But, Selim whispered, his voice thick with emotion, if you stay, if you truly stay, maybe we can build something new. Something that isn't built on blood. I closed my eyes, leaning into his touch. The road ahead was terrified. I was an imposter in my own life, a villain trying to play the hero, surrounded by enemies who wanted my crown, and a lover who had every right to want my head. I'll stay, I promised. I'll fix this. I'll tame the monster. Selim pulled back slightly, his golden eyes searching mine. Then start by getting me a meal that isn't stale bread. And Lysander. Yes. If you ever look at me with those cold eyes again, he said. And this time, there was no heat in his voice, only a steel promise. I won't hesitate next time. I will kill you. Deal, I breathed. He didn't kiss me. We weren't there yet. The chasm between us was filled with 10 years of ghosts. But as he turned to the window, watching the moon rise over a kingdom I ruled but didn't know, I saw his shoulders relax for the first time. The tyrant was dead, but the emperor had just begun his reign. And that is how the viper tamed the wolf, not with chains, but with the terrifying vulnerability of a forgotten heart. If you enjoyed seeing Lysander scramble to regain control while Selim holds all the cards, destroy that like button. And tell me in the comments, would you forgive a lover who tortured you because they lost their memory, or is the past unforgivable regardless of intent? I'll be reading your answers. Subscribe for the next chapter. Until then.